Power, hype, and addiction. There are three things that I've noticed define the relationship between Games Workshop and the consumer of late. I want to take a look at these phenomena and see if I can actually establish the things going on in the background. So, what do I cover first? Power, addiction, or hype? They all play into one another. Let's just do them in alphabetical order. Let's start with addiction. Has anyone here felt particularly burned by Games Workshop? Perhaps another developer even. Fantasy Flight Games? You used to love X-Wing, but the power creep is really giving you the shits. Why does an X-Wing cost so many points in that game for what it does? They should be like, what, 2-3 points cheaper? Come on. But do you still buy them? Do you still collect the miniatures? Do you buy the dice? Maybe you just limit yourself to Games Workshop paints. Do you say to yourself, yeah, Games Workshop's so overpriced, but I'm not spending a cent on their kits. Instead, I'm just going to buy their overpriced paints. How many people have you heard say, I'm never buying from Games Workshop again, only to see them buy the very next cool kit that Games Workshop drops? I'm willing to bet it's quite a few. Who sat there late at night browsing eBay or buy, swap and sell pages and made purchases? Who completely forgot that they even did that? Who sat there and bought a whole new Games Workshop army and never built more than a quarter of it? I'll tell you all right now, I'm guilty of pretty much every one of these things. So I could be projecting. Maybe I'm the only one, who knows. Thing is though, we always have these excuses we like to tell ourselves. Actually, that's really good value. Oh, this paint has just the right colours. Oh, you know, they've really turned it around as a company. They listen and I feel valued now. In reality though, the truth is more like, it's good value for a Games Workshop kit. Vallejo paint is better, but it's a lot more effort to buy. Now, Games Workshop, they do the bare minimum they have to in order to not look like shitbags compared with every other company out there. Now, I'm not saying that, any of this to have a go at Games Workshop. I'm saying this because it's how we, the hobbyists, rationalise and how we sucker ourselves in. The interesting thing, I think, is that there's an addiction here. And it's such a weird and unlikely place to spot it. But hear me out, even if I do sound crazy. We love opening new shit. We all like the idea of building an army. We like to show off a new thing. It's psychological. How many times have you hopped on Facebook and seen a new release miniature? How many times did you give it a like even though it was painted like a bag of shit because some guy bought it and rushed through it? It happens all the time. I've even been the guy who rushed through it. We buy these things because we get a hormonal rush when we buy something. We get a rush when we open something. Maybe we even get one when we build a kit. How many people watching now build one miniature in a box and then they start to get tired of building the miniatures in that box? They were really keen to get started, but now they built the first one, they're like, oh, it's boring now. And they put it down, they come back later. I've done it. I freely admit I've done that. I think this is part of why some people can't give the hobby away, no matter how much the company has failed them in the past. They need the feeling of that new purchase, that high they get when they buy something. Maybe the manager takes a picture of them when they buy the new army, puts it on the store Facebook, and they can sit there with a big beaming smile all proud of this new army they've bought. I haven't done that one, but I've definitely seen it. Who's been to a Games Workshop store and noticed the patrons always seem to have new projects, but never really seem to finish the old ones? I see that shit all the time. There's something in the consumer's brain which rewards them for buying and opening miniatures. On top of that, to use a poker term, we've become committed to the pot. This refers to when a person has put so much of their resources into something that either it's unviable to pull out or they just think that, hey, I've got it under control. If you put $5,000 into a poker hand and you're down to your last $50, well, you may as well bet that too. That's kind of the mentality. Well, I think that's something people do in this hobby. If you've dropped $5,000 on your Eldar army, well, what's spending another 50 at this point, right? Maybe you don't buy anything at all anymore, but doesn't mean you give away the hobby either. How many unhappy bastards still play Age of Sigmar or 40k 8th edition but relentlessly complain about it? I used to complain about 40k and 6th edition and 7th edition. I just simply pulled out. Until they fix the system, I won't support it with my money. I'll only point out the faults, as if someone, who actually gives a damn, will watch the show and maybe do something about it. That's the only reason I talk about them. Sadly, I was rewarded with 8th edition 40k, which isn't my cup of tea. So again, I just avoid playing that shit. But a lot of people don't. They say things like, "Oh, I've played for 20 years, I don't want to quit now." Or maybe something like, "I have a massive army, what would I do with it?" Which really means, what would I do with myself and my time if I quit? What about all the time I've invested in this hobby? It's wasted. What am I trying to say here? I'm saying that people are addicted to Warhammer, and not just Warhammer. People are addicted to tabletop gaming. Maybe it's X-Wing, maybe they've always got to buy that next new thing, even if they don't need it. Maybe a lot of people have a scum and villainy list in X-Wing that they really don't need. Maybe they got a Shaltiri army in Drop Zone Commander. I don't know. But we like buying new shit. Let's move on. Let's move on to hype. Hype is the thing powering movies like Star Wars. Hype is the reason a new iPhone, which is pretty much just the older one with a bigger screen, is lusted after by teenage girls. Oh, fuck, Macca. Stereotype much? Yeah. Hype is the reason Games Workshop gets away with so much that is mediocre. Is this a loaded statement? Well, give me a chance. Let's look at specialist games. Now we have a few releases, we can see a pattern. They announce the game, they preview the miniatures on Warhammer Community, they talk about what a great system it is, they release some interviews with the developer, they release the system, and they release a box or two or even more related to the system content, and then they sit on it and do nothing else for ages. Now, again, I'm not having a dig at Games Workshop. This is how they choose to market. They talk something up, get everyone hyped right up to buy it. Oh, it's going to be the next big thing. It's going to be huge, popular. Oh, it's a great system. The balance will be fantastic. Oh, it's all going to be supported. And all our little addicted people, they go out and they buy it. All the young players in Games Workshop who never ever played Necromunda probably didn't even know it existed, all go out and buy it when it releases. And then it just sort of sits in their cupboard at home unused. People get so hyped up and they go out and they buy a new army for 40k a month into working on it, they get buyer's remorse and they think about selling it all off. It just so happens, about another month later, there's another release dropping, and then all of a sudden they say, maybe I don't want this army anymore. Maybe I want that army over there. That's really cool. I want that army. And I've seen this happen so much now and commented on it. That's part of the reason I felt the need to include it in the video. If you think I'm crazy, let's look at the Daughters of Khaine release. Or two Age of Sigmar releases in a row. Daughters of Khaine and Idoneth Deepkin. 18th of the 2nd, 2018, Shadow Queen Unveiled, which is the trailer for Daughters of Khaine. 19th of the 2nd, Daughters of Khaine Part 1. 20th of the 2nd, Daughters of Khaine Part 2, and so on, until the 24th, when we get the pre-orders for Morathi Returns. 25th, we get Shadow and Ruin. 26th, Daughters of Khaine Part 6. 27th, Rumour Engine, 27th of February, previewing the next release that's not Khaine related. 3rd of May, Daughters of Khaine pre-orders for the remaining miniatures. Last mention of Daughters of Khaine on the Warhammer community to this date. So that's basically 2 weeks straight of nothing but hype. In fact, just over 2 weeks, about 16 days straight of hype for this one faction. And we get to the end of that faction, and then they're completely forgotten about to focus on the next faction. And that next faction starts before you even finish with the old one. That's a release cycle's hype train. There's a preview, followed by a flurry of articles and activity about the product. It then goes on sale partially a week or so later. Then the tactics articles come out, and then another week from that, and next item's released or hinted at, and then another week goes by and the next set of miniatures release. It's a cycle. Same thing with the Idoneth Deepkin. Follows the same pattern. 8th of April, Who Are the Idoneth Deepkin? Trailer preview. 9th of April, Idoneth Deepkin First Wave. 10th of April, this week live on Warhammer Live, they look at Idoneth Deepkin. 10th of April, Who Are the Namati? 11th of April, who are the Achaleans. 12th of April, who are the Isharan. They're fishermen. The Isharan are? They're fishermen. The 13th of April, monsters and war beasts of the Adonath Deepkin. 14th of April, pre-order from Beneath the Waves They Come. So that's the pre-orders for the first miniatures, and that is 6 days. 6 days after the trailer for them, they drop. Now, this isn't all of them, this is just the first wave. 16th, Adonath Deepkin Rider War. So they sit down with the Rider and he talks about the fluff and blah blah blah. 17th, this week on Warhammer Live. And they look at the Adonath Deepkin this time. This is the last one on the Warhammer community to this date. Alright, by my calculations, we should have a release each weekend for the next 3 weekends. Weekend of the 21st, 28th, whatever. Now, before the Adonath cycle is done and dusted, and they vanish from Warhammer community page to make way for other items, keep that in mind. This is a constantly repeating cycle. It's going on for 40k, Middle-earth, and Specialist games, and it's doing this all at the same time. Usually there's a Sigma release, and then one of the other 3, Middle-earth, Specialist, or 40k. And they take it in turns, so that there's always a different thing for a different system ticking over. And by the time you get from one system back to itself, so you go from, say, Age of Sigmar through 40k, through Middle-earth, through Specialist games, back to Age of Sigmar, your buyer's remorse is set in, and you're ready for that next big purchase, and you want to sell all the shit you just bought, right? Number 3. Probably the most controversial part of this. Power. The hype train is incredible for Games Workshop products, and it's made even more extreme thanks to the way Games Workshop sells power, and more precisely, power creep. They've always done this, but where once Games Workshop sold a new and overpriced codex once or twice a year, now you have many releases a year. This epidemic started a long time ago, as my friend Ryan pointed out. It's a trend which has gotten exponentially worse over time. The number one reason editions change now is when the rules are bloated and broken by the codexes or army books within, which I do want to do an episode all to itself on, because I think I've figured it out. But, for example, a very simplistic way of looking at it. Biker knobs are what broke 4th edition, 40k. A series of codexes culminating in Grey Knights is what broke 5th edition. Demons, followed by Tau, followed by Eldar, and then Marines in succession broke 6th edition, with a combination of Screamer Star, Missile Tide spam, Serpent spam, and Grav Bike spam, and allied detachments formed from within these. And lastly, formations and detachments are what broke 7th edition. Each and every one of these terrible design choices by Games Workshop broke the fundamentals of the game, often due to the most basic factors. This situation in 8th is made even worse, because they have a living rule set where they rebalance their forces on a regular basis now. Which sounds great on the surface, but suspiciously, it's only after enough time has passed for a lot of people to buy an army. If you think I'm wrong, look at the Imperial Guard Commissars. This to me is the most glaring and hilarious example of this, which was basically they went from game breaking to now being in a state where you're basically worse off if you actually take them in your army than if you don't. Now, in all fairness, to Games Workshop's credit, this might be a natural consequence of the time it takes to play something and get the feedback, and then to write new rules about it and get an FAQ out. That could be the timeline for the cycle. It could take them a month. I highly doubt it. It's like a 2-day job, but anyway. Interesting thing I should say was, it was pointed out to me, when it comes to power, it's like 5 stages of grief. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Again, I probably sound crazy, but think about it. Think about the player reactions and tell me they don't sound like this. Denial. No, that unit or codex isn't a broken mess. Anger. I can't believe this happened again. Bargaining. Maybe we can house rule it. Depression. I can't stand playing against this. This isn't fun. And acceptance. It's okay. Games Workshop will fix it in time. It is what it is, and I can't change it, so I'll just sit here and take it. Anyway, now, these big factors are all forming the perfect storm for impulse buying. You have lots of hype, people are pumped for releases. The kits drop, and people purchase them because they love to purchase things, thanks to our addictive personalities. People who are doing the purchasing may be further influenced by the power of a faction, which makes it more lucrative to buy. This is especially true for the tournament player, and even the casual player who doesn't want to lose all of their games. When the company changes the balance of power, it ends the hype for that product. And the reason it wants to dilute the power of something is because they want to hype the next new big thing. And people, they don't react with anger. They instead say, maybe it's me. Maybe I made the wrong purchase, you know? And they try and rationalize it. And then they move on to the next hyped item, chasing that purchasing high. So, what's the point of today's episode? Nothing really. I just felt like making it. I noticed the addictive tendencies in myself and others, and how reluctant people are to stop playing or painting Games Workshop systems. How supportive they are of the company at times, when such support is kind of debatable. Also, I really need to reiterate, Games Workshop isn't actually doing anything bad here. They're just simply marketing their product effectively. I'm just pointing out how they do it. They are successful, they're a successful business, because they market well. They target an audience who is receptive to them due to the addictive effects of the system, and they capitalize on the impulse buyer. Anyway, give me your thoughts and comments below. Have you tried to ditch the system and just failed to pull it off? Are you guilty of buying that army and then getting that buyer's remorse and going out and buying something else? I want to know. Am I just completely pulling this out of my ass? Probably. But these are the things I've noticed in myself and those around me. So I kind of get the feeling I'm probably on the right track here. Because, yeah, there is dopamine and things like that released in your head when you open something. Who here doesn't enjoy opening cool new things? I think everyone does. So I think there is an addiction factor here. And not the kind of addiction factor where it's like, you know, needs to be made illegal and it's bad and it's gambling. And no, it's not like what's happening with video games at the moment. But it's a very real thing, I think. Anyway, let me know your thoughts and feedback in the comments below. See you all next time.